Today's episode is presented by Lodestar, the fee experts.
Everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Lodestar Lending Leaders. My name is Alayna Gardner, and this week I'm joined with Raquel Borras from New American Funding. You're their social manager, and you do a lot online, including Rock the Boat and Women Who Shred. Really, thank you so much for just coming on and being willing to talk to us.
Thanks for having me. I saw that you were doing this, and you obviously had some guests that are friends of mine, and I was like really excited when you asked me to join.
We like people who are leaders in the lending industry, it turns out. And I definitely think you qualify as that.
Thanks.
And of course. And so I think I definitely want to start with one of your core values that seems to be everywhere when we looked you up, which is vulnerability. So what does vulnerability mean to you, and how do you apply that to what you do as a social manager and in all of the other channels that you present yourself in?
Yeah, it's interesting because I was not a very vulnerable person growing up. And it wasn't until I shared my story on LinkedIn, and I was very vulnerable, I couldn't get any more vulnerable, that I realized how important it is, because that's how you truly connect with other people. And being, in social media and marketing, that's where all the connection is now, is really tapping into someone's emotional side and being vulnerable and transparent and just, honest. It it goes a long way, where I think before it was very different, but I do find that with social selling and just in social media in general, you do have to have that piece of vulnerability, I think, to really connect and to have your message come across to the other, to your client, your audience, anyone that you're trying to reach. I feel like vulnerability is really important.
I completely agree. It's one thing that I personally try and do a lot on my LinkedIn page. Is I've realized that the more it sounds like a terrible thing, and it does sometimes feel like you're almost being vulnerable for the sake of clicks or for the sake of views. But some of my top performing posts are where I'm being vulnerable about my mental health struggles, about different pieces of my professional career where I've had difficulty. And I've seen that content perform higher than any other thought leadership I've done. So it really tells me that other people are feeling very similarly and need that validation from other people.
Absolutely. They need to know they're not alone.
Yeah. And I think that's so important. So, you talk a little bit about this, but, obviously being vulnerable on social media, on LinkedIn with your peers is one thing. But to teach your LOs to do it, to get business and to grow their platform is another thing. How do you bring that vulnerability into mortgage lending that is a heavily regulated, what you can say, what you can do industry?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I've always been very transparent about that part of my job as well. It's not easy because loan officers aren't used to being marketers and social media, influencers, if you will. And so for them, a lot of them, it's really difficult to wrap their head around how am I supposed to get business from sharing personal stuff about myself? And it's really hard for them to understand that. But what I try to tell them, and I've been doing this a lot more recently, and I think they're starting to kind of like, okay, that I can do, is I'm telling them, like, share the stories behind, like, for instance, a lot of them get 5-star reviews, right? And most of the reviews are just talking about how the LO did, a great job and this and that. I'm like, well, now let's dive into the background. Like, what was that loan like? Is there something there that you can share with us about that particular loan? So I have one loan officer who's really big on that. And like the latest 5-star review he had, it was a pretty difficult loan because there was a lot of like family stuff going on and lawyers were involved, and they did need to kind of like buy a family member out. But like, I love that he shared that, because if you saw the review, we would have never known that it was kind of a complicated loan. So I'm trying to do more of that right now, because just once again, with the vulnerability piece, that's how you connect with, a potential client when they hear an actual story, as opposed to, just listing what an APR is, or not an APR, but what the mortgage rates are at the moment, and is there going to be a housing crash? Like, I think they tend to repeat the same thing over and over again, where people are just kind of tuning them out, because if I'm not looking for a home, I really could care less about what the rates are and about different loans, but I would still relate to hearing a story of being able to put someone into a home that necessarily maybe it was like going to be really hard for them to buy a home, but we were able to do it. Like, that to me, I don't care if I'm looking for a home or not. Like, I want to hear those feel good stories.
Exactly. And I think there's something that a lot of times people don't realize is sometimes in marketing, your best marketing collateral pieces and your best stories that you're telling, because really that's what marketing should be, is you're telling the story of how your business operates, how your business works. And so things that like we've done in the past year is talked about times we've made mistakes. It's like, when have we made a mistake? How have we owned up to it to our clients? And those clients, when you make a mistake and you rectify it properly, those become clients for life, right? Because they know that if something goes wrong, they're going to handle it properly. And that's very similar to the LOs that are dealing with these really difficult to close loans, these unique cases. It makes me as a borrower, if I have a similar struggle, or if I say, I know I'm going to have a tough to close loan because of, let's say, my husband and I own 2 small businesses, right? That automatically adds difficulty to a loan versus being straight W-2 employees. So like, I know I can trust someone who's worked with small business owners to close my loan more than someone who maybe has only done a traditional W-2 file. And I think that's just some of the best advice you can be giving to your LOs. And so,
but it's not easy.
It's not easy, and it's a tough thing to acknowledge that, like, you can make mistakes and it's still okay. Or like, it's definitely a tough thing to have that vulnerability, and it can be painful. And it's definitely a tough thing. And to kind of pivot to some of your other work, your Rock the Boat show and your other work in general online, you talk a lot about bridging the generational gap. What exactly does that mean to you, and why is that so important to you?
Well, for me, being that I'm the mother of a 22 and 19-year-old, and I'm 48, I found that just parenting and also having a good relationship with your own children, you really do have to learn how to relate to the younger generations. And I have found that when you can do that with your younger generations, even older generations, and bridge that gap, like, then that's where kind of the magic happens, right? And I think that more and more, because of technology and because of our youth and what they know and what we don't know, there tends to be, I think, a tendency for the gap to widen even more, because it's quick. It's easy to say, well, I don't understand them, so I'm just not going to even bother having a relationship with our youth, or even, older generations saying that about us, or about millennials, right? And I feel like the only way that we're going to get better as a race, I mean, it's pretty profound, but I feel like we have to bridge the gap, and if we're going to do better in this world. And so for me, I have found that talking to kids and being able to relate, it has given me so much, like, just knowledge, and also it's also helped me to be able to relate to my own kids and have a great relationship with them. So I find that it's incredibly important. And then just even within the industry, we're finding more and more younger generations coming in, and what a better way to do that than have the older generations come in and mentor and guide. That's why I love, that you're doing this. I love, Allie. There's so many, people in this industry that, that are new. And I think it's really important for us older folks. I can't believe I'm saying older folk for myself, but I ain't 48. I'm getting up there. It's important for us to help and mentor and to bridge that gap. I mean, that's what we have to do for sure within the mortgage industry, I believe. If it's going to get any better or go anywhere, we have to attract younger generations.
Crazy concepts. And I think, I definitely see, like, I was reading something this morning that blamed another thing on avocado toast as to why it's the downfall of our society. And I can't tell you the last time I ate avocado toast as a millennial. It's been a minute. And it's just one of those things that I can tell you, if you blame millennials for everything and say avocado toast is the reason for the downfall of our society, I will immediately stop listening
Yeah.
to you.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing is like, we have to hold ourselves accountable too, because guess
Mhm.
what? A lot of us parented the millennials. We're parenting the Gen Zers. We are the ones that created phones. We're the ones that have created social media, all of those things. So for us to not hold ourselves accountable for the problem as well, like that, I think is pretty naive.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of people at fault, and I'm not even going to touch blaming one generation. It's just more, I just have a personal vendetta against avocado toast at this point. It is delicious, but it's just, I'm not having avocado toast every day. That's not the reason I can't buy a house, right? And so I think that's always, it's one of those things that if someone says that, I'm like, okay, I can't, because yeah.
Yeah.
And to be unserious for a moment and make that avocado toast joke,
Mhm.
you describe yourself as a goofball, and so I think that's a good. It's just like it's a hard thing to pair with the seriousness of mortgage
Mhm.
banking, right? There's just we're putting people into
Right.
houses. There's a lot of finance involved in all of this. So how do you promote that within the workplace and bring that fun element um, to your content and to your coworkers as well?
Well, for me, it kind of just happened organically where I was
Mm-hmm.
on LinkedIn and I was posting, and it wasn't until I kind of embraced my goofiness and embraced that part of my personality that I realized that it's okay to showcase that part in the mortgage industry. If anything, I stood out. That was a good way for me to differentiate myself
Mm-hmm.
when I was posting. And I know at first, a lot of people kind of were kind of taken aback by it. I'm not going to lie. Like there were definitely leaders in the space that maybe didn't take me seriously because of that. But I also like to go against the grain. And when I was seeing that everybody was the VP of something, I kind of was like, who cares what your title is? Like, I'm going to be the queen of goofiness because I'm going to show that it's not about your title on LinkedIn. It's about so much more. So I almost did it just to kind of like rock the boat a little bit. And it just stuck. And if anything, I can't tell you how many people reach out to me and they're like, I just want to know who you are because you have a title, Queen of Goofiness. So it's an invitation too for people to want to know more about you. So that's why I tell people, like, have fun with your headline. Maybe you'll draw people in because of it as opposed to just saying VP of, sales and whatever, or VP of, yeah, I just think
I know exactly what
I
you're
was just
talking
so over
about.
titles, and now it's stuck. Yeah, and now it's stuck where now it's like it's part of my brand. So another thing too to show like, hey, you don't even realize what's going to be part of your brand until you just start putting yourself out there and then seeing once again like what resonates with people and what doesn't. And it just kind of resonated with people that I didn't really care.
And
And so and I just kept going with who I was. And if anything, and every company that's ever hired me within the mortgage industry knows exactly what they're getting. Like what you see is what you get. So I'm really
mhm.
blessed that I get to come to work and I'm the same person that walks out that door in the evening, same person 100%, like 24/7. And to be able to do that is it's pretty amazing. Like I have to admit, like I feel incredibly blessed, but it's because I was willing to just be me,
Yeah.
and
And
people
it's
are
a
either going to like it or they don't, and you'd be surprised.
and I think being authentically yourself is one of the most challenging things you can do. What advice would you give to someone younger or maybe even that just struggles with being authentic at work? What advice would you give them when you do see that pushback? I
Yeah,
know
I
it's a
mean,
big question.
obviously, there's boundaries, and it's important to respect your boundaries, and it's important to understand that as well. Because
Mhm.
for me, it's a hard one, and that's something that like I'm working on right now because I want to speak to teens on being empowered, and a lot has to be with being true to who you are and being authentic. And I think a lot has to do with just being confident with who you are. Because I think nobody's really going to be who they are unless they're like really like themselves and are confident and what they can bring to the table. I think a lot of it is because the fear of the judgment and what people are going to say. But usually what happens is like, that's a lot of insecurities, right? If you're thinking about, if that's like how you're coming to work, like, oh, I can't be me because I'm afraid of what people are going to think or what they're going to say, or maybe I'm not going to be able to still have my job. And so I get that and I respect that. But at the same time, you'd be surprised by being yourself and showing up as your true self, how then the opportunities and then the companies and then the people are going to align more with who you are. And then you're going to end up in a workplace like I do, and with a boss that I absolutely adore. We get along great. My coworkers, I love coming to the office. I don't have to come to the office. I can work remote, but I purposely do because I enjoy my colleagues here, but we all have kind of the same vibe, if you will, but it's because I was willing to just be me. And so then I got a company that was willing to like hire me because of that. And I just feel like it's a better opportunity to be able to be aligned with the right company and people in this industry as well.
Yeah, I definitely think it's one of those things that you almost need to know the rules so you can break them. Is something I'm a big encourager of, especially. Is like, you should know all the HR rules. You should know what isn't appropriate in the workplace and how you can be authentic to yourself within those guidelines. But also, there are things that are outside the boundaries of acceptable, I think, is for a workplace. For sure.
Oh, absolutely. Like I said, there's boundaries and there's respect. Like I still have a lot of respect, and I know that there are boundaries. And so I just play within that.
Exactly. So it's the more you know, right? I read every employee handbook when I started a company. I'm the crazy person. I'm like, I want to know what isn't
really?
allowed. I read all 90 pages. 90 to 100, whatever. I read the whole thing because I need to know.
One of the few that do that. Yeah.
HR may or may not either love me or hate me, or it depends on the person. So as we wrap up here, we here at Lodestar, we're big about celebrating the people and things that inspire us. After all, a Lodestar is a guiding light in the night sky, both literally and metaphorically. So who do you consider, or what, a Lodestar in your life, either personally or professionally? I like to add that caveat.
Right now, I would have to say it's the group, it's the youth, the teenagers. Like, it's the demographic of teenagers right now. They really are kind of guiding me with all of this, with my passion project and so forth. So for me, that's kind of, that's my North Star. And if I can educate also teenagers in financial literacy, like I'm doing that at my teen empowerment events, I always will have a financial literacy piece in our events, because I do believe it's important to educate them at a young age. So for me, it still kind of lends to what I do in the mortgage industry, and then it's educating them as well. So it's kind of cool that I'm able to kind of, I guess, bridge that gap too within the industry and just within, just that demographic of teenagers. But yeah, that right now they're my Lodestar.
I love that. And so as we wrap up today, what would you like to share with us? What would you like to share with our audience, and where can they find you?
Well, they can find me on LinkedIn and Instagram and TikTok, even though I can't stand TikTok. But I also have a YouTube channel called Rock the Boat, and that's where I do speak to kids all ages all around the world. And that's my passion project, and I get to do that. And then I get to do social media and content creation for New American Funding for our team here. So I am, once again, very blessed because I get to do so many things that I enjoy. Like, I don't come to work every day. I come to the office and get to create.
And I love
that. So yeah, I'm a lucky gal.
Well, I hope that everyone else gets to experience the level of luck and the level of joy that you experience in your work, because I can tell it's truly amazing. And thank you so much, Raquel, for joining me today. And everyone, thank you so much for listening. And we'll see y'all next week for our next episode.